Good evening. Welcome, Valley View community. Thank you for taking your time to join us this evening to learn more about our Return Together plan for the fall of 2020. We really appreciate you taking the time to not only visit the website, many of you have already made a fall selection, and many of you have questions and would like to learn more about the current planning efforts and what are your options for the fall. I am Superintendent of Schools, Rachel Kinder, and I'm pleased to spend some time with you this evening to answer questions for what we know at this current time regarding our planning effort. We know this is a very difficult time as plans are very fluid and you're working with your families and your children to make the best decision for you and for your family and most importantly for your children. We as a staff are working very diligently to be prepared as possible even though there's changing conditions every single day. So our planning effort continues, and in the meantime we want to continue our partnership with you community, our families, to ensure that we are as prepared as possible for all of the changing conditions. Tonight on our webinar, we have several panelists with us who are leads and of the planning teams in the district, and they spend a great deal of time working with many individuals who are working very hard on the planning efforts. I'd like to take a moment to allow them to introduce themselves so that you're aware of who we have with us tonight that will be supporting questions and answers.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nita White, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Herder, Executive Director for grades 6 through 12.
Good evening. My name is Jill Chukowis, and I'm the Executive Director for Pre-K 5.
Evening. I'm Esther Twelch, Executive Director of Technology.
Good evening. I'm Carter Larry, the Director of Safety and Security for Valley View School District.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Richards, and I'm the Director of Transportation.
Good evening. My name is Michael Lopez. I'm the Director of Facility Operations.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Gregory. I'm the Health Services Coordinator.
So as you can see, we have a great deal of expertise sitting on our panel tonight, and these individuals work with many other staff who are working in each area of the planning effort. So tonight on our webinar, we wanted to just present a brief overview, spend a little bit time on the website, the Return Together 365 website, where the plan and all of the details are being located. And keep in mind that that is a continually evolving place of our website, a resource. So we wanted to spend some time and ensure that everyone had access to all of that detail that is being provided there. Ultimately, our plan is all about ensuring safe and secure learning and working conditions for our staff and our students. We absolutely want our students back together with us because we know that is where they can learn the best, but we also want to ensure that our students and staff are safe. And so that is what this planning effort is all about, that we are taking all the measures possible to bring about safe learning and working conditions. We need to have a plan that's responsive because the changes are continually happening on a daily basis in terms of health numbers, the public health landscape, as well as the official guidance that's coming forth. So tonight we're just going to talk a little bit about the information that we have in the plans at this point, and then answer questions that we've been receiving from families or that we receive on the Q&A feature. We are in a webinar format this evening, so we cannot see you, but you can see us, but we can see questions that you type in the Q&A section. We may respond to those questions directly to you, or we may answer those questions live. And I don't believe we'll be able to get to all the questions this evening, but we will review every single one, and some of them will warrant an individual response. Others we will add to our frequently asked question. So as you are well aware, there are many ongoing challenges, and you as family, as parents, are facing many of these challenges as things continue to evolve, and you and your family continue to navigate the changing restrictions, the requirements, the health and safety requirements. And as a school district, we are navigating changing guidance from the state and federal level. Our goal is to balance in-person instruction with health and safety. That is the ultimate goal. And so as much as possible, we'd like to have our kids with us if it can safely be done. We also know that families and staff are going through a great deal as they are adapting and preparing for new conditions with very limited time to make arrangements. We know that uprooting what is your traditional routine in life is very difficult. And so we do not take any of these decisions lightly, and we know that families need as much time as possible. These adjustments with their children, with their work, and our staff do as well with their not only professional but personal lives. We need to have fluidity in our plans as we transition. It is very likely that we will evolve our plans many times, and from that point forward, even at implementation, we will have to adjust at some point in the future again. I shared at the board meeting that remote learning is going to be a part of our world for quite some time, for the foreseeable future as we know it. So what we have presented to the Board of Education on Monday evening was the hybrid option and remote learning option that we are presenting for families in K-12. As I mentioned previously, we know remote learning is going to be a part of our children's world for quite some time in either small increments or in a greater scale. And we do also know that it's going to be quite some time before we are able to go on that path of on-site learning. So at this current moment, we are presenting the options for hybrid or on-site for K through 12, and then on-site or remote for early childhood. And that, of course, is subject to change as things evolve with the current health circumstances, with the official guidance, and with the approval of the Board of Education. We've had a lot of questions about the health and safety aspects of our plan. And this continues to be an area in development, and we continue to refine, and we will continue to share that information with you as well. I'd like to share with you that the website, Return Together 365, which you can access from vvsd.org, contains all of this information, and we're going to be continuing to add to this. I'd like to ask the leads from the health and safety team to share a few points from this area, as well as any of the frequently asked questions that have been coming up a lot lately before we get to the Q&A portion.
Again, good evening, everyone. Carter Leary. I'm one of the leads on the health and safety team. There are a number of different topics that we hope to discuss today, and as I'm looking at the Q&A, I've been trying to answer as many questions as possible. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to everything, but some of the areas that we are going to talk about are some of the things that have been popping up. We're going to talk about cleaning and disinfecting, face coverings, hand hygiene, health protocols, impending safety drills that are mandated by state law, self-certification and symptom screening. And then we will also speak to our visitors protocol, along with the big topic that I'm looking at right now in the Q&A is socially distanced. Mike Lopez will lead us off discussing cleaning and disinfecting.
Well, good evening again, everyone. My name is Mike Lopez. I want to talk a little bit about cleaning and disinfecting. The district will be implementing several new measures in addition to what we already have. Many of you may know that we already have a night shift cleaning crew throughout the district. That's comprised of over 100 individuals that clean our buildings every night. That will continue on a daily basis, 5 days a week, and they will focus on not just what their normal duties are, but they're going to focus on high touch areas such as tops of desks, areas that are touched during the day by students, doorknobs, handrails, those types of things. But in addition to that, what we're looking at doing is planning on providing what we call day porters. And what that would look like would, in every school, we'd have a day cleaning person, at least one person, that would be available to clean on a real-time basis in the hallways, in the bathrooms, in the large spaces like the cafeteria, the library, pretty much the public spaces, the reception areas. That individual or individuals will be responsible for maintaining sanitization on a real-time basis as the students are in their classes. In addition to that, in the classrooms, we're looking at having available wall-mounted hand sanitizers in every classroom. So as a student comes into the room or leaves the room, they would be able to have their hand sanitized immediately upon coming and leaving. In addition to that, every classroom will have hand sanitizer solution in a bottle, in a spray bottle, as well as paper towels, and that can be used on a real-time basis as well for ready use at any moment. Common spaces will also have hand sanitizer. They will be equipped with large 64-ounce containers spread throughout, usually at entrance points or where public might enter. So we'll have that available in the common spaces. One of the things that we're doing, and we find that it's also a recommendation guideline through IDPH, is the shutting down of drinking fountains. As you know, that's an area that can be an area of concern. So we're looking at shutting down drinking fountains, capping them. What we will do is recommend encourage water bottles be brought in by staff and students. And we will have the ability to fill those water bottles with water dispensers, touchless water bottle dispensers available throughout the school. Restrooms will have hand soap mounted on the wall along with signage that encourages kids to wash their hands frequently. And we're also looking at cleaning the buses on a daily basis. We would have a separate crew that comes in there nightly and does what's called a electrostatic sprayers, using that equipment to sanitize the seats and the areas, the rails and everything and throughout the buses. And one of the last things we're looking at is providing a what we call a responder van. And that's going to be a van that's also equipped with what we call electrostatic sprayers, cleaning solution, UV lights, pump sprayers, foggers, and a 100-foot reel hose that can extend out. The purpose of this would be that van can respond to emergency situations or where there might be a concern. They can come at a ready notice and clean at a specific location. They'll also be available to clean on a daily basis outdoor spaces such as the playground areas, maybe a grandstand or some athletic type areas. So those are the things that we're looking at right now and planning to put in place for all of our schools.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, and thank you. Once again, my name is Susan Gregory. I'm the Health Services Coordinator. This time we're going to go over the importance of wearing face coverings. All students and staff members will be wearing face coverings or face masks, which need to be covering the nose and the mouth while at school. Face shields will also be available to be used as needed and can be worn with the face mask as well. We ask that you, as the families of our wonderful students that come to our schools every day, to continue to work with your students and your family members to make sure that they are wearing their face masks appropriately, especially when you go out into the community or when you're caring for someone sick at home. So you're going to be an integral part to make sure that we maintain suitable face masks at school. And you can help us out by that to make sure that your students know how to wear their face masks at school, just like when they do when they go out into the community. Another thing that we're going to talk about is hand hygiene. And this is real important that you as the family members can make sure your children are washing their hands correctly. It's going to be very important that everyone washes their hands or uses hand sanitizer. That's important for students and staff as well. Make sure that you're scrubbing your hands for 20 seconds with lots of soap and rinsing with water. And if soap and water are not readily available, you can use hand sanitizer, which is going to be readily available throughout the school. This is important if you work with your children at home to make sure that they're washing their hands and using hand sanitizer appropriately, which will help decrease the spread of germs in the school.
Okay, before we move on, there's a few questions about face masks. We will be providing a cloth face mask for every child and staff member. Face masks brought from home are also acceptable. We will have backup face masks if a face mask should, break, the earstring should break, or some other matter occurs. So students are allowed to bring their own face masks from home. They're highly encouraged to do that. And then we will also have a backup supply, and then each student will also be supplied a cloth face mask. And for in certain areas, we will be providing face shields as well. And some students may need those in addition to the face mask, or in circumstances where there's a medical exemption and unable to wear a face mask. Okay. So I'm displaying the website because a lot of this information is here, and we want families to know that this is here as a reference. There are also resources that are listed here as well. Our nurse coordinator just went through several of these areas, and so if you'd like to refer to any of the information, it's here for your access, and you can access this at our website. Mr. Larry.
Okay, safety drills. Per law, the Illinois School Safety Act, we have to conduct safety drills every year in a specific order in some particular cases. So we have a minimum of 90 days to actually conduct a law enforcement drill with our local law enforcement partners. We've reached out to them to see how we can best conduct this and what their new protocols are as well. The Illinois School Board of Education has just recently released guidelines that they will not be waiving safety drills for the upcoming year, and haven't given anything specific as to how we should conduct the drills within the schools themselves. With that being said, safety is paramount for not only our staff, but our students. And so this actually gives us the options to doing certain drills class by class, especially specific to our shelter in place drills and some other particular portions, although it may be rather time consuming, but under the new, COVID plan, I think that we'd be afforded an opportunity to stretch some things out over the year that we traditionally haven't been able to do. Self-certification and symptom screenings. So anyone entering any building within Valley View School District will have to self-certify that they do not have any of the symptoms with regards to COVID or COVID-like symptoms, whether it be cough, congestion, fatigue, bloodshot eyes, or anything along those lines, and that you haven't contracted COVID or tested positive for COVID within the last 14 days. There'll be a form to be completed at either one, the front security booth, or two, within the front office of the administration prior to entering the building. And that'll actually kind of dovetail right into our visitor policy as well with regards to self-certification forms. So I'll just jump to that right now. The visitor policy is still in development, but with that being said, the team is definitely leaning towards visitors by appointment only, which is something that we've been doing and has been working very well for us throughout the entire summer. Any visitor entering in front of the property will have to do complete a self-certification and verification form. Any visitor entering our building will be required to wear a mask at all times. And then the normal other protocols that are in place with regards to showing a government ID will still remain in place. And then jumping to social distancing, we have been working diligently with our sign department, creating thousands of signs for every building throughout the entire district. So we will have signage posted not only outside, but inside our buildings, basically directing people first, with regards to if you have any of the following symptoms, you're not allowed to enter the building. But even once you enter into our foyer areas or what, consider some of the man-trap areas, before you can get into our red zones, before you can get into another portion of the building, signage posted there as well. Upon entering the building, just no more than 50 people within this particular space, signage with regards to what 6 feet apart actually looks like, signage with regards to where they can sit in the big box areas, or where they can stand in the big box areas, and then staging the furniture in a manner where we are able to keep our students safely apart from each other. We're going to suspend the use of lockers. So that way, I know some of our kids used to like to share lockers. They're just naturally, socially, individuals. And it's going to be difficult for them if we afford them an opportunity to utilize their lockers this year, not to engage in the same behaviors that they have in the past. So we made the recommendation, obviously, to Superintendent Kinder that we suspend the use of lockers right now as well. And so we will be working diligently and sending reminders out to not only students and staff on a regular basis, and parents, with regards to our, the new protocols that are put in place, just gentle reminders as to what we need to do to keep everybody safe.
Okay, thank you. I think we've covered everything else from health and safety at this time. So we are going to leave a great deal of time at the end of the webinar for Q&A, and so we will get back to some of the health and safety questions that are coming up in the question section of the webinar. And I did want to now spend some time talking about the recommended instructional framework. I do want to mention that this is our proposed plan, and of course, as I will say many times, it's subject to official guidance. It's also subject to changing conditions. We're monitoring things daily. We've got updated recommendations from the Illinois State Board of Education today. We continue to monitor the data reports that's put out with the health metrics in terms of positivity cases and watching what's going on in our region and across the state. And then we're also considering all of the logistical considerations. And as families make their selections, this is going to truly help us to understand that we and confirm that we can fully implement the logistical needs as well as the health and safety protocols, given the numbers of students per building that have selected each option. So this is a summary of what is going to be offered at this point for fall reopening by grade levels. For early childhood, that's our pre-K program, in-person instruction daily with the scheduled out or remote Friday, and that is predetermined, that would be communicated in advance, or a remote only option. Elementary, we are at this point recommending an A-B alternating schedule, which contains 2 in-person days plus 3 remote days, or a remote only option. We do plan to reassess this model for second quarter, that would be at the end of September, to see if we could transition back to on-site for daily attendance. That is a lot of the recommendation of the team and a lot of the current guidance out there for that age of child, for developmentally what is best, health and safety wise, what we believe to be in the best interest. But we need to ensure that we can meet all of the safety measures, teach routines and procedures, and ensure that we are monitoring the health and safety. Middle and high, we are also looking at alternating hybrid option of in-person days plus remote days. At this level, middle and high school, we would be having daily early release times, and that would be supporting remote learning that is occurring. And at STEP Campus, this is also an alternating schedule, which we have detailed information available on our website about that, and we will be communicating with families in terms of how we can ensure that our students are getting some in-person instruction and then also modified community-based instruction, because that's very critical for our students in the adult transition program. So on our website, you will find information about each of these levels, and we are going to answer some questions about these about each particular level, or answer questions that are coming up. Some of the questions that are being asked are of a very fine level of detail, and although I won't have answers for all of those tonight, or we won't have answers for all of them tonight, we will be able to communicate that information in our next level of planning. Okay, so I'm going to ask the panelists they've been monitoring the Q&A, and they're going to try to answer some of those main questions that people are asking. And we will also revisit the website and see if there's any other critical details that we've left out. So I'm going to turn it over to our executive directors of Pre-K 5 and 6-12, as well as our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, to start with some of the Q&A.
Okay. I answered a question a moment ago in reference to masks. Will students have the opportunity to have breaks and take their masks off aside from having lunch? And yes, the answer is students will be given breaks throughout the day, maybe to go outside for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, where they could take their mask off at the elementary level.
Just to add to that, students will also be able to take their mask off if they are outside for PE, which is a longer period of time. They would be socially distanced, and then they would be able to take the mask off outdoors.
That will apply for recess at the elementary level as well.
There are a few questions from the middle and high school level regarding passing it. So how would students move from class to class? And as of our current planning, where possible, students will remain in class, but based on how schedules run when students attend in person, it is likely that students will be moving throughout the building in order to ensure that that is safe and healthy for everyone. Of course, everyone will be wearing a mask, as we've already discussed. However, the hallways will also be marked, where students will be moving in a single direction The hallways will be widened because we won't be using lockers, which will allow us to put a median essentially down the middle of the hallways, which would allow kids to remain physically distanced when they are passing. And of course, if too many students would end up in a certain hallway, we would stagger those passing periods or adjust as necessary to ensure that all students were healthy and safe. Another question that I know middle and high school families have, because it came up in the spring as well when we were on remote learning, is about grading students' work and how students will receive their grades. We would be returning to our traditional grading policies and approaches beginning in the fall for students in middle and high school. So what you have been used to would be how students' work is graded, how their grades are calculated, how the grade books are used, and how parents can review students' work and scores, both for assignments that have been turned in or for assignments that may be missing in the Infinite Campus portal as well. So many of the approaches we had in the spring where students' grades couldn't go down after a certain date, or we had adjusted our middle school grading to be different to accommodate students in the spring, those things would not continue into the fall. We would return to our traditional grading approaches for middle and high school.
There's many questions about, will the remote learning option have contact with an instructor face-to-face? Will be teachers facilitating that? Adam or Jill, would you like to answer that, please?
I can answer for elementary that yes, they will have both. It will be a blended model. So if the children are at home in any type of remote setting, they will have teacher-led instruction or contact as well as independent activities. And then we're also offering time where the teacher can join for like support. So there would be like a Zoom meeting or something where students could actually join if they needed extra help.
The middle and high school level, the way things will be scheduled for students when either if they choose the full remote option, the days they're remote, if they choose the hybrid option, some of our programming will depend heavily on how many people pick between the different options. And so of course, further detail will be provided as that is available. However, it would be a mixture of face-to-face instruction when on the computer, but a significant amount of work would be done independently as well by the student. However, we would have daily opportunities for students to check in with their teachers as well. And that would be during the afternoon period and different times depending on middle school or high school. So students would have access to teachers daily. They may not receive direct face-to-face instruction daily, however, on days that they are remote.
There are several questions about making a selection, and one of those questions is, when would we find out if what our child's schedule is in terms of what would those in-person days be? At the conclusion of having our families make the selection, which that closes on July 28th, and I know we of course will have to do some follow-up in that area if the family has not made a selection. We will need to know the numbers we're dealing with. So it would be at that point we would be able to communicate by last name, alpha letter of a last name, what the assignment would be. And then we are also working particularly at K-8 and trying to make it work through high school as well, to have families have the same schedule attending. There's another question related to, if we choose in person, on site or hybrid, and our situation changes, would we shift to remote? We know that there's going to be circumstances, particularly maybe there's an ill family member, or it's not working out for the child, where the child would then transition to full remote, and we will have to make that adjustment. But however, on the reverse side of that, if a family chooses remote, we're at this point having the selection be for the semester, and that's just due to the staffing and scheduling and logistical challenges. If we are able to reassess and are able to bring students back fully, which would be the ideal, but mostly probably not likely situation, then we would certainly open up that option. Okay, other questions that we're seeing about the instructional side that are coming up quite often. Assistant Superintendent White, Executive Directors Allison Herder.
There's a question that's coming up quite a bit about the number of students in a classroom. In a hybrid model, there's going to be 50% or less of the students that would generally be in a classroom. So at elementary, we don't have the exact numbers yet, but what we're predicting with the number of students that would be selecting a remote only option would be about 10 to 12 students in a classroom at a time.
And I can answer that question related to middle and high school. Because the schedules run differently than in elementary school, it's a little bit harder to pinpoint. However, our hybrid option for anyone who would be in attendance in person, in each class, there's approximately 3% of the students. But that assumes that no students even choose the full remote option. So if we have a certain percentage of students choose the full remote option, which we know we will, we're confident that in nearly every class there will be less than half the students. There was a question that, of course, the way the last names break down, if your child goes to English, for example, and there just happens to be more kids, we of course would set the priority that students can be physically distanced at that 6-foot mark, and we would of course have to adjust accordingly. So even in a case where potentially more than half the kids would be in attendance for a certain period, depending on the classroom, we would make accommodation to ensure everyone is safe.
There are a lot of questions coming up about why A, B on a Monday and then perhaps again on a Thursday versus A, B, Monday, Tuesday, and then another group of kids on Thursday, Friday. We made this decision because we want to ensure that we are connecting with our students. We realize that this is a difficult time. And if we were to do A, B, Monday, Tuesday, and only see the students and not see them again for another 7 days, that would be less days and opportunities for our teachers to connect. Also, we considered students having meals and options at schools, and by us connecting every few days, at least we could have that connection with our students. So that's the purpose for AB versus AA and then BB later.
There are several questions about lunch, and one of those is how will that work? We are planning for elementary that it will be served meals in the classroom with distancing in place and with the meals being delivered. For our middle and high, we are looking at kiosks of grab and go that students would take the meals at the end of the day. Our nutrition services team is also working on plans for students who take the remote only option of how there could be an ordering system to order meals, as well as students taking the meals, extra meals with them when they leave for their off day or their remote instruction day. So those plans will be shared once we are able to finalize what the assignments will be, and we'll be able to communicate with families. But we are definitely having all of those considerations come into place.
There's a question about, or a couple questions about EC and what the class sizes will look like. So our early childhood or pre-K program is going to be on site 4 days, and then the out Fridays or remote Fridays. And those classrooms in the half day and full day programs without factoring in students that are choosing remote only would be 10 to 12 students. So it wouldn't exceed what we're looking at for our elementary program in the hybrid model.
Okay. There's several questions coming in about technology in terms of new chargers, support with devices. Executive Director Welch, can you help us out with that?
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Kinder. Thank you, families. We have created a device survey that's linked on our technology area of the Return 365 website, and that will enable you to let us know that your student device needs some assistance. There is a self-checklist there if you need to request repairs, or if you have a component missing and you need some assistance. Alternatively, if you're new to the district and you don't have a device, or If you didn't participate in the spring deployment of a Chromebook or tablet from our elementary students, you can also request a device there. And we would welcome you doing that as soon as you've registered your students so that we can get a head start on ensuring that your students have a functional device. We have a way for you to return the device socially distanced, and then we ensure that a loaner device is provided to you that has been professionally sanitized. So we're also taking great care in ensuring that our district issued devices are professionally cleaned before we give them to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's some questions coming up regarding transportation. Director Dave Richards, would you like to highlight some of those areas?
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Kinder. Excuse me. There have been a number of questions come in regarding transportation, and I will tell you that we've been working very hard at developing routes to try and meet all the requirements to bring these students back to school. One of the big ones, of course, deals with social distancing on a bus, and the guidance says for a reason, to the extent possible, because it is nearly impossible to do that. One of the advantages to the AB schedule, similar to class sizes dropping, is that we will have a lot less students on each bus. The guideline does allow up to 50. We are obviously trying to cut that as far as we can on every single bus. We will definitely require face coverings just as in the school, and that comes right from the State Board of Ed as well. And we're adding signage to our buses to remind everyone of that fact. And there have been a number of questions come in about cleaning buses. The deep cleaning that Mike Lopez had talked about will be done nightly. During the day, what we'll have is disinfectant and sanitizer on the bus for the drivers to use between routes as the time in their route allows, so they can clean all the high touch areas, tops of seats, all the handrails getting up and down. So those will be cleaned throughout the day. The deep cleaning, the deep disinfection, that'll be done daily. I've also seen a few come in regarding bus assignments, bus information. Normally that information is coming out right about now. Obviously, some of these schedules are still being built, not just on the transportation side, but on the education side in developing the AB program. We hope to have those out to you very soon. You will still get a postcard in the mail like you always did. And we'll also be sending the bus lists along to the school, so they'll have them. That'll be coming out as soon as the school schedules are finalized. Then we can develop that information for you as well. And there have been a few questions about service from either the high school to middle school for the honor students and also to alternate locations. So we will be providing those services as well, keeping in mind with a daycare center or an alternate location, the alternate location has to be in the boundary of that school that they attend. And there also does have to be room on that bus. We are, whether it's paid transportation or someone who's over a mile and a half looking for an alternate location, we are going to have to be careful about limits on the bus to try and keep everyone as safe as possible. And I just can't stress enough that we are going to do everything in our power to keep everything as clean as possible on these buses every single day, just as they are in the schools.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dave. There are several questions popping up about actually making a selection for your child, and you can find that information on the Return Together 365 page. There is a link that says Fall Learning Selection, and that's where you will be directed to your parent portal in Infinite Campus. If you have any issues with this, there's directions on either how to create an account or how to recover a password if you've lost that. There is a tab inside once you log in that says Fall Selection Survey. You will click that tab and then make the selection for remote only or for hybrid for your child for the fall. Okay. We are getting a lot of questions related to the actual, what is the protocol and procedure if there are positive cases in a school or in a building. And I will give you some basic information, ask our nursing coordinator to elaborate, and let you know that we are working with the Will County Health Department and the Illinois Department of Public Health. All schools across the state are doing this as well, regarding our protocols to make sure that they are consistent, that we're working together on tracing, identifying individuals who've had direct contact with an individual who's tested positive. And then the school response would then be determined by the scope or sphere of where that individual had direct contact with other individuals. And so notification would be made. We would quarantine particular individuals, class, and then also dependent upon the situation or the circumstance, a larger population. Nurse Coordinator Susan Gregory, would you like to comment on that, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Superintendent Kinder. This is on the mind of a lot of people about contact tracing and if students or staff members do contract COVID and have been in contact with people in our buildings. Quite a number of our district nurses have completed a contact tracing course where they know the entire protocol for contact tracing if someone shows up positive for COVID. I have completed it, as well as some other senior administrators have completed the course as well. If a student or staff member is found to be positive for COVID, then everyone that has been in contact with that staff member or student would then be quarantined for 14 days. And there is very specific protocol for how that staff member or student may return back to school. And that is all through contact tracing. And that information is also on what's called the CDC website. That is very accessible to look at. But if someone is tested positive for COVID, they need to be 72 hours without a fever, without taking medication before they can come back to school. So they have to be fever-free for 72 hours without taking fever-reducing medication, or they need to be quarantined for 14 days. And at the end of that 14 days, their symptoms need to be improving, or they can have 2 COVID tests that both show negative results, and the tests need to be given at least 24 hours apart. That's a lot of information. That is a lot of numbers being thrown out, and that information will be posted on our website. If any of you have questions about that, the nurses will know that protocol as well. And that is a federal mandate that we need to maintain to help decrease the spread of COVID throughout the school and in our community.
Thank you. There are a lot of questions regarding, what would be the expectation if a child is ill in home or if a staff member is ill in home. And the distinction will be if an individual is in quarantine, not because they have symptoms, but because perhaps they had a positive test or because they had exposure, if they're able to continue working or attending classes remotely, of course, that is an option. If they're actually ill, it would be treated as if they were homesick, just as we would under normal circumstances, of course, with the understanding that it's COVID related. So of course, that's not of a punitive measure. There are several questions related to students with IEPs or students in special programming, special education. There will be communication going directly to many of those families for the special programming related to how those programs will run and the attendance, what that will look like for on-site attendance, as well as what are the options if a family chooses full remote. Each student with an IEP will have a plan in place so that it's very clear in terms of the services and minutes that are being provided. And we will be sharing additional information from our Student Services Special Education Department for our families to fully understand what that would look like for special programs or for students needing supports or services during the day, whether on-site or remote. And so we will be working through all of those details. I'd like to open it back up to the panelists to revisit any FAQs or any questions that you're seeing frequently asked that you think would be helpful for parents that we are able to answer in our remaining time this evening.
Superintendent Kinder, if I could just jump in real quick. Thank you for answering the question with regards to if someone gets COVID. But a couple of the other things that we're seeing right now, people are confusing whether or not students will have to wear both a mask and a face shield. All students will have to wear a mask at a minimum. At a minimum, a mask. If they choose to wear a face shield, they will still be required to wear a mask with that face shield. You cannot wear a face shield in lieu of a mask. You can wear a face shield with a mask. With that being said, students will not be required to wear both a face shield and a mask. The other thing that is being asked is whether or not a student in a particular classroom refuses to wear a mask. We understand that it's going to be difficult for all our littles and our students as they transition back into school, because this is something that they're not used to, having to be in school for a period of time while wearing a mask. We're not going to be centrally focused on discipline. However, we will put the appropriate interventions in place to work with that specific student and that family to determine why that student feels that uncomfortable wearing a mask, and stressing the importance of the health and safety issues with regards to wearing it and how it's a requirement now. So there are protocols being addressed and specifically drawn up to address students who refuse, student refusal when wearing a mask. So.
Thank you. I'm seeing many questions related to extracurricular activities, athletics, and at this point in time, we do not have information to share on that. We are waiting for guidance that will come from IHSA or IESA, the Illinois State Board of Education, and the Illinois Department of Public Health. It will be at that time that we would be able to determine what we are able to provide, and then what the logistical considerations about how that would work for our students. So at this time, we just ask families to please be patient. We know our kids are anxious about that and really want to know. And as soon as we have information, we will share that with you. There's a question about, will remote learning look differently than it did in the spring? Were things that needed improvement, will those be improved if we choose the remote option? Executive directors, could you please answer that?
Yes, I can share that. We did collect survey results in May, I believe, on how the experience was for students and families during remote learning. And we used the responses from that survey to help us do our planning for the fall. So there will be more of a blended approach where it would be more live instruction and teacher-led instruction, as well as teacher supports, blended with some of the independent work using some of the online platforms that we use. In the spring, we didn't always have the opportunity to have activities, manipulative paper pencil activities. A lot of it had to be done online. And we're hoping that this year we would be able to send materials home with students if they needed to use them at home, so that there was a variety of modes that they could learn in.
Mm-hmm.
I can add on just from the middle and high school perspective. So as Executive Director Chukalis mentioned, we did survey parents and teachers. We also surveyed students in the middle and high school. And based on those responses, one of the things that stood out was the need to have a more consistent school day. And while of course we would offer flexibility, especially when students are remote as needed, there will be a much different expectation that students are beginning their school day based on the daily schedule, whether they are in person or at home. And so sample suggested schedules for how that would run will be published for students in the in the different options depending on what you've chosen for your child, and as well as the ability to connect with teachers much more consistently. And then we mentioned this earlier, but another large change was the grading approaches in the spring were problematic. A lot of students and parents had that thought and feeling, and so adjusting those, making sure our students are accountable for learning, but they're accountable to be learning on a set schedule every day, we feel will be a significant improvement based on the voice that we collected from many different stakeholders.
Thank you. There are questions about before and after care for elementary. And as soon as we are able to finalize what our fall return will look like, we will be working with our before and after partners to provide that service for students when they are on site, for families that do rely on before and after care for their child. So we would be communicating that information in several of the next updates after we have our plan fully in place. There are questions about out-of-district transportation, activity buses. Dave Richards, would you like to comment on any of the early answers on those?
Sure, not a problem. Out-of-district schools are all developing their own plans, and we do have some of them in. We're still waiting on a few more. So that information, your busing information, will be communicated to those families in particular. Once we have it all established, the route selection process for putting that together takes place the first week in August. And then after that, the drivers will be out doing dry runs, checking directions, so on and so forth, like they do every year. And then the drivers will be reaching out to those out-of-district families personally, just as they always have. When it comes to activities, some of that is up in the air only because we don't have final guidance from the Illinois Elementary School Association, the Illinois High School Association, on what sports or activities may be taking place. So again, some of that information is still being developed and will be forthcoming as, as well. The in-district, again, just to, I've seen a few questions pop up again. The in-district transportation, again, those routes should be finalized by the first week in August. So then we should be able to get the information out to you shortly after that. So everyone will have their busing information. You know, one other one I saw too was Wilco. Some of the Wilco plans are still being developed as far as dates and times and how exactly that will work. There will be a Wilco program. We just don't have the final details on how that will look, high school compared to STEP and so on and so forth on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Richards, thank you. Just to jump in there were several questions about Wilco. To echo that, the Will County Career Center Wilco programming will be offered. What it would look like remotely compared to in person is something we are still confirming. However, even if a student were to choose the remote only option, it is potentially possible that your student would still be able to attend in person at the Wilco Career Center. So we are in daily contact with Wilco to find out exactly how their programming will look and how that will overlap with ours. But those are high priorities to continue to offer those learning opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Some questions are related to what if there's a need to transition to full remote for the entire district. That certainly could be a possibility, and that would be dependent upon the data in terms of the cases, the spread that we're seeing, and the direction from the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Will County Health Department. And so if that were the case, we would have to fully transition to all students being at home and all staff being at home at that time. So that would certainly, we would be in a better position than we were in March because we will be far more prepared, but that definitely is a possibility that could occur. Some questions are related to high school additional supports. Would students still be able to access them? The high school teams are working on how they can still provide those, whether virtually or by appointment at the schools, such as seeing your counselor, doing college or career planning, seeing a social worker, things of that nature. And we are going to ensure that we have accessibility to those supports for our students, be it virtual or by appointment in the building, or if we're able to have, small groups in the building, and make sure that those are available to students regardless of the option that they choose. Okay. To open it back up to the panel one more time for other questions that you're seeing reoccur frequently in the chat this evening.
I see several questions about technology, and if you are new to the district, will your child receive a Chromebook, or if you have a defective device? Yes, if you're new to the district, your child will receive a Chromebook, and in the FAQ, there are specific steps outlined that you could read to follow with our technology department and how you can obtain one.
Thank you. The assignment for the hybrid is a frequently asked question. I see that coming up a lot in the questions. We are attempting to assign it by alpha last name, and we are looking to make that the same by household. Even if the children have different last names, we would look at, we're looking at a potential grouping of just using the last name of the oldest child. And likewise, if we're able to accommodate that all K-12, that's certainly a goal of ours, to make it one thing at least easier for families with so many other things in flux.
Hello, I saw some questions about the survey not being present when you registered your students. We recently added the survey, so if you were one of our families that registered their students early on in the process, and we appreciate you doing that, you could log back onto your portal account, and the survey tab will be there available for you to make your selection for the learning. If families haven't created a portal account, as Superintendent Kinder mentioned, there's information on our website. In addition, the Enrollment and Technology Department are offering help this weekend, and our student help will be open from 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock for families specifically that need help creating a portal, so that you can be connected to us in that way. And details are on our website for that too.
Okay, thank you. Questions regarding the school calendar as we come to a wrap. The newly approved calendar is available on our website. This first day of school for students is August 26th, and the last day of school is defined there as well. That would not change if we have to go to remote learning. Those still do count as instructional days. And so those would be counted as attendance days, and the school year would not be extended beyond what is published on our website right now for the required number of school days. So in closing, I know there were a great deal of questions that we are unable to answer, but we will be updating the FAQ. We will be reaching out to parents. There's some questions coming in that require an individual response. We're going to do our best to continue to work through those. For families choosing a remote option for their students, we would be communicating details about getting students the appropriate supplies or textbooks, things that they need of that nature. I'd like to remind you to please visit the website. This contains a great deal of information about how to get the information you need or resources that you need, for example, such as technology. And that information will continue to be posted. Regarding the selection, we are asking families to visit this website, click on this link for fall learning selection to log into their Infinite Campus portal. If you're having any issues with that, we ask you to contact our student help desk, which is located here, or you can send an email to return365@vvsd.org. So in closing, in the interest of time this evening, we will be following up. We ask that families make their fall learning selection on the Infinite Campus portal. And here's a summary of that, of what the hybrid or remote, or for early childhood for remote or on-site. And the school day, first day of school is August 26th. And then just a kind of a summary of some of the points that we've discussed this evening. And also that the plans are tentative and are definitely subject to change based on the changing circumstances. So as we have information or plans evolve, we will continue to communicate those to families. And then even after the point when we have a solidified plan in place, there's always the potential that we will need to make adjustments based on the circumstances or based on cases that we're seeing in our community or situation that we're dealing with in particular building or district. So communication will remain key for our families. And we truly recognize that these are not easy choices that we have to make as parents. We know that there's a lot of concern that goes into all of these decisions, and we know that our kids may have concerns, or they just may be anxious to get back and see their friends. And so we understand that you're dealing with a lot as parents and as families working through the situation. We certainly don't wish this to be the case, but it is. And this is what we'll continue to do to work through it together and continue to adapt and adjust and make the best of it for our kids. And that's truly what it's all about. So we will continue to improve our remote learning options, to have that contact with our students, to provide the supports, and to try to make the best of the hybrid on-site days that we have for those learners as well. So we encourage you to continue to visit the website, make your selection. Please reach out if you have questions. We are getting a lot of questions, as you can imagine. So we will do our best to respond to those, to give you the information that you feel you need as a parent to make the best decision for your family. We thank you for tuning in tonight to watch the webinar. Please look for the updated FAQ. And again, please reach out and we'll be happy to do our best to answer questions to assist you with understanding what to expect for the fall return. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great evening.